Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another session of Mazungumzo. And as usual, this is your host, Dr. Gilbert Githere. It's been a while now since I've been with you on this topic of ours on being on time. I've just paused a little bit. I was reading some other things to connect with our discussion as we go inside the gist of the matter. And they're going to be in high mental gymnastics as we go into the three-quarter way in the book by Martin Heidegger, which you have realized is mouthful, full of enlightenment about existence. And human beings, as we discovered in this discussion, they are involved in a struggle for survival, because you might cover consciousness as one aspect of why human beings are on earth. Martin Heidegger decided to look at life from that we are here, we struggle to exist. Existence is what we go through as human beings in the world, and we struggle a lot. And anticipatory resoluteness is what keeps us going, because the anticipatory resoluteness is you're anticipating something, kind of you're finite, you're going to meet your maker, but you're very, very resilient, you're resolute. You don't want to bring it in the front of the banner, you keep it at the back banner. Your subconscious, as Freudian discussions say, we have things we put in our subconscious because we don't want to bring them in the foreground, because it will consume our happiness. And this is very true in being in time. As we've reached the three-quarter way in the book, we realize Dasein, the existence, is facing finiteness as coming to the end of its life. And for that matter, it is struggling to keep itself happy, to keep on working for its survival, and to provide for itself clothing, shelter, food, and all kind of the necessary things we require in life. So existence becomes a struggle. And one of the very important things that you will notice in this discussion is that there is a state of denial. Human beings survive through a huge portion of their lives living in denial. They never accept the finiteness of them coming to the end at one time. Is one thing they don't want to address. And you will find it even in you yourself. You kind of just live like that. You don't want to accept that this life you're living one time will come to an end. It's one thing you never want to kind of to be in your face. Okay, let it come, but let it remain in the subconscious. I am going to just ignore it. So that's just kind of a little intro, because I like reading, because this is an intense study. You cannot just have the whole thing in your mind and kind of discuss it in detail. It will be an excruciating affair. So pardon me, you'll allow me to kind of, just the way we've been doing it, I've kind of analyzed it in simple language. And so I read, and sometimes I go through it for people to follow what I'm saying. And now we are in part 23. We have gone part 22. So those people who are following, and I should introduce at this point that at a future date, I'm going to put a password and everybody who is interested to subscribe will have a password. We are opening a classroom. It's a kind of a better place for us to operate from. We will use all kind of facilities provided by Google in what they have established in virtual classrooms. And you get a password, and to enter a class or read some material that I have put out there, you will have to have the password, and you kind of go to kind of subscribe something, and then you will get more detailed attention as you attend the classes from different experts that we are trying to recruit for the classrooms, Google Classrooms, that I'm establishing. But that's a later date, and I'm going to introduce it to you slowly. Those people who are interested to go further in studying how you approach a PhD level studies or analysis. Resoluteness gives Dasein the strength to choose that which can be part of a repetitive act. All these acts are very abstract. They even happen without much thought about them. That's why it is very, very important to remember the story of the hammer in the consciousness part, because Martin Heidegger uses it beautifully, how human beings, they have this repetitive. That's where the word tempo or temporality comes in, and also ecstasy. Those words and the phenomena, ecstasy, phenomena, temporality, are the components or entities that allow this repetitive in life. So you would be hammering, or you're building your dog a kennel to sleep in. But as you're doing that and you're hammering nails into the item or the kennel, and you're preparing it, you're also thinking of your retirement. You are budgeting. How much should you be keeping on the side every month or every 15 days if you're paid twice a month? And you're hammering and you're thinking about it. What about your children, their food and their clothing and their shelter, and your wife, her clothing, her necessities? You're also pondering about this. So what repetition that we are talking about here is that ability of human beings to toggle between ideas, multitasking mentally, many issues at one time, until one time you pause and you say, okay, I'm going to just deal with what am I going to eat today? Then you start going through, should I have pizza? Should I just grab a Whopper? Should I go, might be just a plain hamburger with some chips, and might be strawberry drink or fruit punch? Or am I going to have, dry rice? Now you're just going through from one thing to the other one, trying to see what's your taste this evening. That is the repetitive thing we're talking about here, about Dasein. Repeating what is possible does not bring something from the past, nor does it bind the present back to its former position. No, it is flexible. Arising, which another name for repetition, arising, something arising. It arises in your mind and you ponder over it. So repetition. And it's also an aspect of hyperreality, because reproduction in hyperreality is also analyzed in the same way that actually Martin Heidegger was talking how we live in existence. We are always the repetitive thoughts in our minds and they create a tempo and a temporality, and it historizes. That's how history is formed. Activities are happening in life, and some which are essential, they're registered, and they go into the archives, they're written by journalists, put down, and they become events of history. Arising, which is another name for repetition, in bracket, resolute projection of oneself, does not let something in the past influence it. It does not make something happen again because it has prioritized it against another one which was in the past. It's a very, very intricate kind of idea. It's very dialectical. Repetition is a key activity of resoluteness with the aid of temporality that is part and parcel of Dazan's existence. There is going to be back and forth. Possibilities of resoluteness projects itself through potentiality for being. That's another huge concept here. Potentiality for being. Human beings have that. Otherwise, there will not be human beings. They have potential for being. They will start on something and they will just continue, and they say, I must achieve my dreams. If you are running a marathon, you will practice until you get that time you want, if you have the ability. And you're going to go and you're going to enroll yourself. You're going to go into the Honolulu Marathon, Boston Marathon, and you're going to say, I'm going to come first. I'm going to come second. So there is that potentiality for being in humans. Dasein is in a state of temporality. And that temporality is tempo. Some of these things are uncertain and you cannot tell their origin. They just pop in your mind. That's how people innovate things. They make us have aeroplanes. They make us land on the moon. Some of those things are not yet, they are not like a tree, you can see them, or a mountain, or a rock. It's like a beautiful carving. There has to come an artist, and he has to carve something out of marble, Michelangelo. He has got to bring that beautiful piece of artwork for us to have it. And that's what we are saying. And that's potential for being. Resoluteness doesn't come back to itself and hands itself down. It becomes a repetition of a possibility of existence that has come down to us days in, that has been there. Repetition in this case is an equivalent of fate. In the act of temporality, time is passing and Dasein is getting closer to its end. I talked about that. As you're doing all these things, at the back of your subconscious, you're in a state of denial because of resoluteness, anticipatory resoluteness. You're keeping that end is near, is coming, but you're not going to let it hinder you to survive and be able to tackle problems in front of you. No. Repetition in this case is equivalent of fate. In act of temporality, time is passing and Dasein is getting closer to its end. I had said that. This is an authentic history of existence arising from Dasein's future. Fitness of Dasein is always in the future. Dasein's mind in denial is always in the having been mode. Resoluteness. Now we come to that. Resoluteness is something so important in human beings. Actually, I don't think there will be much survival and existence if there was no possibility of resoluteness. Resoluteness is the human spirit in Dasein. It is the one which allows one to be in a state of denial, especially about its end. And also it allows it to ponder fate that always look big in its everydayness. In repetition, the history of Dasein is very clear. Dasein's history about being with others. The history of Dasein is nothing than communal, being with others. There will never be history without communities and social activities and struggle for existence. That's what creates history. Resoluteness that hands itself over or down is called repetition. This ability of Dasein is possible because Dasein is temporal. It engages in temporality and the mode of ecstasis through existential ontological constitution and repetition becomes a possibility. Anticipatory existence is a variable of death, and Dasein temporality is always temporizing around this fact. Then I give you a kind of like a formula, handing down equal fate, equal ground for destiny. It's just like a formula, like Rudolf Carnap, I think I'm getting it right, and Wittgenstein, a language game, and somebody like Frege, the Vienna Circle people. They taught the philosophers that we go from syntax and we go to semantics. So we create formulas to allow it easier to achieve our conversations. The conversations that we have when we use syntax and semantics, symbols and signs and facts, we are able to kind of converse and achieve our goals for making our lives easier through the science. That's another fact. I will not go into it so much. We're going to go into details in the class and that we are going to have. Destiny of Dasein is tied with that of others, and he stresses this act. Fateful destiny humans are born with, inherit, meaning, finiteness, and end. We are born with that. We cannot live forever. We are not immortal. We have an end. So you can see Dasein is temporal to the history of its existence. This closedness of Dasein's existence make history. Then I come with something like a formula again. Anticipatory resoluteness equal or equivalent to historicality and equal to a kind of historizing and equal to Dasein's authentic history. All this anticipatory resoluteness, we are in activities. Anticipatory resoluteness comes from our daily activity to exist. And that brings out history. There is historicality going on. As anticipatory resoluteness is, historicality becomes. And there is the aspect of historizing. And that is Dasein's authentic history. Dasein understands, and this allows him to engage with those around him in the world. And at the same time, he is able to scrutinize those entities around him especially to see if there are those who can help in his existence. That's why you see understanding doesn't understands. Understanding is an entity so important to the existence of Dasein. Because to understand is to innovate. And to innovate is to make your life easier, more comfortable, and happier. Let's assume if it's not an atomic bomb, but also atomic bomb, nuclear energy, microwave. So all these tie up together. Dasein has the ability to think about his internal states, for example, how happy he is. At the same time, he thinks about the situation around him. What are the people doing around him? This is what Martin Heidegger calls being in the world. See, he was very simple, but if you kind of don't go through Heidegger, you think he is difficult. But actually, he's talking about your daily life. Are the entities that make you exist, who are they? They're things like understanding, conceptualizing. Those are entities that allow you to exist. And those are the beings, entities. They have their being. And that's why when we come to now artificial intelligence, John Searle discusses artificial intelligence and the computer and the human mind. How are they going to interrelate? Can a computer have emotional intelligence? Sympathy? Can it be empathetic? Have empathy? Feel sorrowful in a cause of a day or loneliness? These are very fine entities, transit, fine aesthetics of being in the world. Let me not deviate so much. The historizing of history is the historizing of being in the world. Beautiful statement there in quotes. Dasein also encounters the behavior of others who are always around him. Their behavior varies from one to the other and from day to day. Dasein's historicality is the historicality of the world. Subject and objects are being historized. The question is, which of their being is being historized? Because in the existential ontological of Dasein, only entities that have been discovered are historized. A good example is a carving, a beautiful work of art like the Mona Lisa. I will take that one. If you look at that and you say Mona Lisa, it will never have been if the sculptor was not there. So the artist brought out the art. So that entity was brought out because there was somebody who had gained the expertise of sculpturing. Michelangelo, I think. And anything Picasso did became an entity that we enjoy because it exists. Nothing will become an entity if it is not brought from present at hand and ready to hand. They remain hidden. They have got to be discovered and brought out. So that's a very, very important. so that subject objects are being historized. The question is in which of their being is being historized? Because in the existential ontological of Dasein, only entities that have been discovered are historized. That's you'll come to, is obvious. If you haven't innovated, let's say, if, for example, we haven't reached, let's say, war part, for example, I would say, it's like cleaning the carbon dioxide that is polluting our environment. That everything that we have from now is actually going to help to take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And that's very, very important. But we haven't reached a point where we have those kind of gadgets. They are going to come and become part of us. But they are now all hidden in the world of the sciences and the discoveries and the innovations of man. They haven't, our knowledge hasn't completely gotten perfect about how we're going to clean on daily basis. Most of the gadgets we have around us are kind of taking in carbon dioxide and making it less in the atmosphere. Worldless subject does not have history. Worldless subject has no history. The ready to hand and present at hand are the one that end up being historized, meaning that the entity that exists as being in the world have a history. Now that's what I told you. A piece of art is brought out from a marble. It becomes the statue of so and so, of something valuable. It becomes an entity that you can touch, you can feel it, you can see it. Then I come with a little bit of a subject there again. Doesn't historicality of the world. On the basis of a statistical analysis, the Daseins historicality equal horizontal temporality, equal temporalizing of that temporality. It's like a formula, because some of these things you can remember them beautifully if sometimes they're put out in that kind of formula. Fact-wise, doesn't exist, so he experiences things that have been unconcealed or discovered in the world. Some of these entities are not those who help in Dasein existence. They are there in their own right, just as Dasein is. That's a very important point, because not every entity is there in the world because of who it is in Dasein's existence. No, it exists like a mountain, is an entity by itself. Dasein, as humans, are entities by ourselves. Subject and objects are entities on themselves. A good example here is the equipment and work which have their history for being in the world. Books are in this category, and on top of that, they have the fate hanging around their existence. These entities also, they have fate. They can stop to function and they become useless to us. We use them one time, they become historical and they become items of the museum. Nature does not have its history, but a countryside which is variable of nature has a history. For example, a countryside of Scotland was colonized by the British. So if you go to Scotland, Okay, it's part of nature, but at one time it created history because the British came from the island of Britain and they conquered Scotland and they colonized it. Same thing with some countries in Africa and many parts of the world. Historizing of the world in its essential existential unity with Dasein. You'll allow me, I'll go over that statement again so we kind of, I see whether I can bring it. Historizing of the world in its essential existential unity with Dasein. This rationale gives us historizing within the world of that which has these characteristics as entities ready to hand and present at hand, indicating these entities have yet to be discovered or unconcealed. It's also important to know that the historical world has that trait or characteristics because of being factual. Some of these things you got to think deeply about them, ponder about them a little bit, then they become clear. Being in the world is what makes an entity historical. Historizing of history is equivalent of historizing of being in the world. Dasein's historicality is the historicality of the world. According to extrahorizontal temporality, this belongs to temporalizing of that temporality. Horizontal is like you would say is horizon. It's like areas of happening of events. It's a horizon. But you're looking at the horizon of the Roman history. You're looking at the activities of the conquistador in a certain time in South America, like when they destroyed the Maya civilization and the Incas. That is horizontal. You can reflect on that, and it has activity, and it has its history, and is an ecstasy. It has a temporality. As I say, there are some things, their certainty and their origin is not completely something you can explain. There are some things which in evolution, Jacques Monod, change and necessity. Some changes that happen, they happen by chance. Even might be our evolution to become humans. I hate to say that, but pardon me, it's not from a biblical perspective, but from a scientific point of view of Jacques Monod, that we could be creatures of accident, our evolution. So some of the things are not really, that's when you hear ecstasy, temporality, reputation, evolution, mutation, on and on and on. These are things that happen in the activities, and that sometimes from the religious explanation, that's why you hear the spirit works together with science, and the spirit helps evolution by those things happening by chance. The activities of the spirit are within the activity of evolution. Controversial subject, I never really trained on it very much, but sometimes you got to bring it in such a discussion where Martin Heidegger is concerned. Because actually, if you look at it, when he uses these words, you're saying temporalizing, temporality, tempo, extico, ecstasy. phenomenology, hermeneutics. These are things which help us to decipher change and necessity, like Jacques Monod, the laureate, I think, in biology, that some of things in evolution are beyond our minds, and sometimes we cannot explain them. We just see and reach a point where we see, how did we happen to evolve from simple organs of the ocean to human beings starting to walk, and then to think, and then to create civilizations of different sizes all over the world. We find human beings, there's a form of, huge innovations of all kinds. There must be a reason. We continue. As long as Dasein exists factically, he will always experience those entities that have been unconcealed around him. Being in the world has entities in a state of present at hand and ready at hand, and these are there awaiting to be discovered. That is the nature around us. Nature around us. Equipment and work, for example, books, have fate, and the buildings have a history. Excuse me. It is good to note that nature is historical. For example, a countryside where a battle took place is a historical piece of land. There are entities within the world, and so are historical in nature. These are world historical things. That's understood. It's a beautiful piece. World history is an ontological term as per this analysis. The phrase has double significations. One of them is historizing of the world together with Dasein. Then the second signification is historizing of those things within the world which are in a state of present at hand and ready at hand. This means the entities discovered within the realm are within the world. Historical world is equivalent to the within the world, and in this state, it is a home to different entities who help in the existence of Dasein. It's simple. Within the world, the entities are discovered, and they help the existence of Dasein. And Dasein is very dialectical term. I keep on using as humans, but Dasein to Martin Heidegger, it's almost like a puzzle, a paradox. It is not exactly as simple as it is. That is why it acts the way it acts. Time travel. You can be walking in New York, but actually your mind is completely somewhere in Johannesburg. Your mind is actually zigzagging to see, that place that used to have a beautiful gallery. I used to go have a cup of coffee and look at beautiful work of art, or listen to some beautiful jazz music by Miles Davis when you're in South Africa, or Malisela. The Black Mambazo. When somebody is given a ring, there is no change of location, but historizing takes place in the form of movement. This is true of all world historical happenings. The change of location is insignificant. In this process, only movement is relevant in historizing. That's a deep concept. Historizing is a movement, but not a motion, physical, which makes a thing change location. This would be a big problem for this analysis. It will be trying to unravel